started. It's a quarter after the hour, and this is a session on Open Textbook Library Accessibility Collab as part of the Open Education Network's Engage. So before we dig into the heart of the matter, I would like to share with you a few housekeeping items. Yesterday and today, we've been sharing land acknowledgements, including for the University of Minnesota. I am joining you from the Central Coast of California, which is the ancestral and current home of the Northern Chumash and Chumash in my particular region. And there is so much to learn from the Chumash, and one of the reasons that, or one of the ways that I am doing that is through my yard and my garden and through indigenous plants. And I'm going to share with you a link in the chat about one particular plant. So California is a biodiversity hotspot, and that means that there are many plants that only grow here and nowhere else in the rest of the world. But if you were to drive through California, you would kind of see the same plants over and over again in landscaping. The diversity of our flora is not typically represented and not typically well known. But through the years, as I've had this yard to get to know and to steward, I've come to appreciate what native plants offer and the relationship they have with fauna and how they have co-evolved together, long before any of us were building strip malls in California. So the link in the chat is from the California Native Plant Society, which has partnered with various indigenous tribes and people in California, of which there are many. And this is a really interesting examination of white sage, which some of you may know from a more consumer perspective. It's often shown in TV and film through Hollywood. And it's a plant that I grow in my yard because it is often poached and harvested by the ton illegally in California in order to support this trend or what we see in Hollywood. So take a look if you're interested. It's a really fascinating background, and just one of the ways I think that by listening to indigenous voices and the relationships that they've established with the land and the plants that are around us, that so often we don't see and we don't know their history or their current status, that may be of interest. There's also our community norms that will be shared in the chat and that we've shared as OEN Engage has gone on the past day and today. We are recording the session. There will be a period towards the end of the session where we work together, and we will not record that. I also have for you the links to our social media if you'd like to find us there. And when we share the recordings, we'll also be sharing the slides and transcripts and anything that you might need to continue this work. So thank you again for joining us. My name is Karen Lauritsen. I'm Senior Director of Publishing with the OEN. And as I just touched on, I enjoy gardening for wildlife and creating habitat and restoring what was once here before homes and other developments took over. I am also learning to draw, which I explored a little bit yesterday in Jamie's zine session. And speaking of Jamie, she is co-hosting today. Jamie, would you like to say hello?
Sure. Hello, I'm Jamie Witman. I'm the Open Educational Practices Specialist, and I am a musician, as I mentioned in my own land acknowledgement, a big hiker, and love to be out in the world here and also reflect on the past, present, and future of the indigenous peoples around me. So thanks.
Thanks, Jamie. So before we get started with the agenda, I think all of us are probably aware of this, but I want to just spend a moment talking about why accessibility now. And I'll say that's actually a little bit of a misnomer because we have been focused, all of us, on accessibility, I think, since the beginning, particularly in our work publishing and supporting authors in publishing. I know that in Pub 101, for example, we talk about how to build accessibility into an open textbook or into an open educational resource from the beginning, and not to treat it as something that needs to be remediated or just kind of ticked off at the end, but to really try and embrace that accessibility mindset. This aligns with our values as a community. And then, of course, there are also legal requirements that we need to meet. ADA Title II regulations, European Accessibility Act, which requires that digital content must be accessible, and the metadata about accessibility must be made available. So, of course, thinking about the Open Textbook Library as a resource that can be used anywhere by anyone around the world, we want to be able to meet these legal as well as ethical requirements as best we can. And in doing so, we also work to support you and your work as a publisher and author. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our accessibility efforts over the past several months, year or two since the beginning, and also give context for our metadata collaboration that we will be embarking upon later in our time together, and invite you to contribute metadata to Open Textbook Library records, because while we now have the infrastructure or the capacity to share this metadata, we need your help, of course, to actually populate it. So thank you for joining us. So to get started, when the new ADA requirements were in the works and we were hearing about the timeline in which they need to be implemented, I was fortunate to be able to consult with Catherine Klosek, who's Director of Information Policy and Federal Relations at the Association of Research Libraries, on best practices for MARC accessibility. And she and her team were really helpful in guiding the work that Jamie and Andy Saroff, our developer, and I did to address accessibility in the OTL. We added a couple of fields. If you're really into it, they are fields 341 and 532. And then later, we also added field 856, and we'll talk a little bit more about these fields later. In addition to this behind the scenes work, we added accessibility to our submission form so that when an author or publisher is submitting a book to be included in the OTL, they can tell us, they can share with us the accessibility information for their work. We also, to help support that, provided a statement model that so many of you have shared with us. Kwantlen Polytechnic University has a great example. And we point people to that as a way to model what it is that is useful and that what we're looking for. Jamie also worked with Hudefi, our student assistant, and trained him on how to work with this accessibility metadata. And finally, we also updated our frequently asked questions in the OTL to address some of these changes that we had been making. Here is that OTL question. So this has been here for a long time. How does somebody know if a book that they're considering in the Open Textbook Library is accessible? It's a great question. And of course, the Open Textbook Library is a referatory. And that means that we are pointing to the resources and in some ways are like a marketing mechanism. We are not validating or testing these books. We are taking authors and publishers at their word, both in terms of what the book is about, what it's going to cover, who the author is, as well as what is accessible or perhaps not accessible about it. So we describe how MARC records include accessibility metadata, and then explain that many authors and publishers are in the process of remediating their publications to meet evolving accessibility standards. We wanted to acknowledge that this is a process for many of us. Additionally, as I mentioned in Pub 101, we talk about how to build accessibility into an open textbook. We also held an accessibility session in which we spoke with our Manifold friends about the tool. Manifold itself recently released a VPAT, which describes the accessibility of Manifold. Jamie developed some Manifold accessibility quick guides around accessibility. We also convened a KEDI working group. For a while, we were exploring the possibility of KEDI as a remediation tool, which did not pan out, but we did spend some time on that, and I appreciate the time that people spent exploring that. And we have held several tea time sessions on accessibility topics over the last several months that many of you have contributed to and attended. We also, in the last few months, published our own VPAT for the Open Textbook Library, A VPAT is a voluntary product accessibility template, and you can find a copy of the OTL VPAT at this link, open.umn.edu/opentextbooks/vpat.pdf. Now, in planning for today's session, Jamie and I are very thankful to the Publishing Advisory Group, who provided great feedback about how we frame today's session and how we might structure this work together. That said, we fully expect to learn more. This is the first time that we have tried this, and so we look forward to your feedback about how it works. Again, to give this work that we're going to try and do together in a few minutes some more context, the Open Textbook Library is a referatory. So we're not a catalog. These are not our books. We did not publish them. We point to a collection of books that meet certain criteria, and we have them here so that you, primarily librarians, can share them with your faculty and invite them to review a book. The metadata that is in the Open Textbook Library is self-reported. It's not verified. BC Campus does this. They verify their metadata. They verify accessibility, which is incredible and also very time-consuming. And so I just want to draw that distinction that we are trusting what the author or publisher provides and sharing that information through the Open Textbook Library. There are, of course, many challenges to this. I don't have to tell you. There are a lot of different file types that might be made available. One file type may be more accessible than another. There's no way for us to differentiate all of the different accessibility features or deficiencies in different file types. We only have one record for each title. So this is not a perfect system, but we do not want to let perfection be the enemy of the good. And so we are continuing to work and make progress on this together. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Jamie, who's going to start sharing an example with you, again, to try and prepare you to share metadata with us in this co-working session that we're about to start.
Thanks, Karen. Yes, so I am going to share a link to a textbook that's in the OTL right now that you can, look at on your screen if you'd like. And this textbook is one that came in through our submission form, and they filled out all of the accessibility information that we asked for on that form that we will also look at a screenshot of in just a moment. But this will walk you through kind of what you'll be reporting in that co-working session as we get there in just a few moments. So what we're looking at are accessibility tags that use vocabulary from schema.org, which hold any questions for just a moment. We will get to it and I will explain all of that. An accessibility statement, accessibility deficiencies, and an accessibility report. And I'll also say that this language that we use is what MARC captures. So this is the language that MARC uses for these fields. So one of the pieces of feedback that we received from our publishing advisory group was that the word deficiencies was maybe not the language we would want to use, but because that's what MARC uses for that field, and that's how we're trying to capture that metadata so that we can be, in compliance with all of the different things around accessibility. We are kind of sticking with that language. Yes. Okay, Karen, could you go to the next slide, please? Okay, so this is what our users see. So the goal with that FAQ that Karen shared is that somebody could go to the textbook in the OTL that has had this metadata updated, and they would see a section right underneath the About the Book section of this textbook that has their accessibility information. So what is visible to our users is this accessibility statement. So you can see it says the web version of the marketing map meets WCAG 2.0 level AA and has some more information on there. We also have a URL because we, of course, don't want to take up an entire page on the user view here. This is the accessibility report. So this links back to what this person has provided as a link to their own accessibility report. So as we said, we're taking the word of the author and publisher at face value, and many of them have done a really great job remediating their textbooks or starting with accessibility at the forefront and have created these checklists that they've gone through that haven't been adapted from BC Campus, for instance, is one of them. And so this gives us the ability to give a brief accessibility statement, but also link out to some more information about the accessibility, and somebody can really dig into, for instance, those different formats. Since we only have the one record in the OTL, this is a way where a user could then look at the PDF compared to the HTML version of a textbook, and they can see where that accessibility lines up by being able to link out to that very easily for our users. So that's kind of the front end view here. And then we do have what the submission form looks like. So this person who submitted this textbook, as they were going through and putting in the textbook name, the link to the textbook, they reached the accessibility section that asks them to provide as much information as they can. So starting with those schema vocabulary tags, if you're on the submission form, you can click that link that is a live link from Schema, and it walks you through what these accessibility features are. Many of them are easy to pick up on as you read the name. So one is table of contents, for instance. So do you have your table of contents in your text somewhere? Do you have structured headings? So those vocabulary tags are more jargony than a summary would be, which is why this is not forward-facing information. This is something that's in the back end, in the MARC piece of the accessibility. Below that, then is where we ask for information about the accessibility features and efficiency, which is that nice statement that you see on the user end of the textbook record. Okay, and now this, for those of you, as Karen mentioned, who are really into this stuff, these MARC record fields, this is that OTL admin view. So those tags are that first feature there. So that's MARC record 341. And again, this is really like getting into the weeds on this stuff, but some folks are, catalog librarians, and really, yeah, including this just for fun if you want to see kind of how we're operating, what we're doing with this information and how it's being displayed on that front end. So we're taking those tags and adding them in there so you can see alt text is one of them, having closed captions, page navigation, reading order, table of contents. Those are coming directly from Schema. So we can tag those in that metadata field. 542, it actually is two separate line items within 542. It's 1 and 2, and that is that statements and deficiencies. So we can kind of break those up there. We can see that accessibility statement. Again, that's the one that's on that user end view. The deficiencies is kind of this back end piece of it. And then 856 is this last one. This is that accessibility report URL. This is, as I said, really nice for folks who have done a lot of work around accessibility and their textbooks, who have really put together a really deep dive into what they've looked at, and also a way for us to show the differences between formats. And so this is a nice place where we can add that URL so somebody can take it and really take a good look at the accessibility and see which format they might want to share with their faculty or their students or whatever users of that textbook. So again, this piece is really just for as Robin said, data nerds who want to geek out on this kind of stuff. But these are the fields that we're using, and then of course these are standardized fields, and these are the ones that Karen was able to consult on to see which ones were the best options for including this accessibility information.